First off, I want to send my condolences to Heather and the Albini family, Heather's family, Greg and the Electrical family, Bob Weston and Todd, and the Shellac family. I'm sure it's hard to grasp this also being a celebration of Steve. And I want to celebrate him. I want to never forget him, always remember. And my life and my own trajectory, if I was to draw a line from 1998 when I met him till now, is just milestone markers of how Steve really had an impact on my life. And I will say, like, I always felt like I was kind of the rings of Saturn, and you all and everybody at Electrical and his family was kind of Saturn, and every now and then I would land on the planet, but I'll go back to the rings of Saturn and kind of observed him from far away. When we first worked with Steve in 1998, I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't even know what he looked like. And we'd gone to Electrical, and we were setting up the drums, and he didn't come down until later, maybe 11 or 12. And we were setting up the drums, and I remember my drummer kicked me, and he's like, "Hey, Steve's coming down." And you could see him, coming down the staircase if you're familiar with Studio B. He came down and was a sweetheart, and we had a hell of a session. And of course, we're one of thousands of bands he's worked with, but we really was important for us in our career that we had worked with him. I had no idea at that time of meeting him how much he would affect my life, or if I was to draw that line again, the milestones would be becoming an engineer producer. I flew to Chicago a year later. He was kind enough to show me how to record the best he could within that week. My emails, I'm a little dyslexic. I know I'm a little nutty in my emails. I can't do anything about it. He never once pointed that out. In recording, I'm kind of like a caveman, like let's make some sparks and fires and make a record. He's a scientist, like I said, taking a rocket ship to the Mars or moon. He can do that. I was just like, I don't know how the rocket ship works, but I can get you to the moon or Mars. So Steve had a huge impact on me. And in doing so, in the process of learning how to record and hanging out with him, again, for the next week when I went back after the 2 weeks we had spent with his band, I'd asked Steve if maybe if he ever came to LA, we would love to open with him. And he says, "Fuck that place. LA sucks. Hollywood sucks. Those bands are shitty and the industry's shitty." And I was just like, cool, sorry, I asked. And then, crazy enough, maybe 2 months later, after I'd learned how to record and stuff from him, he called me up and asked me if we would open up for Shellac at the Knitting Factory in Los Angeles. So one of the things that was really interesting, now in retrospect, I see it, and I'm smiling because I'm thinking about this. I'm smiling about the picture of Steve being an astronaut, dressing up like an astronaut, going to the World Series of Poker, not giving a fuck. And it hit me, he was the biggest kid. I'm a dad, and I just saw him, I'm like, oh my God, like my first 10 years were dressing up like Dracula and the Wolfman. And I'm like, here's this guy dressing up like an astronaut, a full-grown man, and he did not give one fuck. And there he was playing poker, doing what he loved. And at that time, the thing started to set in. Of course, after his passing. But it still made me smile that no regrets. And for everybody that has a tough time articulating what had happened and the hollowness and the emptiness that we feel losing him, Steve's the only guy, I believe, that could have described his own passing, and it would make sense scientifically. However, I know Steve would explain it like sound waves, and he would get it. So I'm smiling in the celebration of Steve and his birthday, and happy birthday. I had flown to Hawaii for Steve's wedding, and it was so beautiful for him and Heather, watching him there. And that, in doing so, going to Hawaii, I'd never been to a tropical island. I ended up falling in love with Honolulu. I lived on and off the island for a good 7-8 years, recorded every punk band on the island, and eventually, with my wife, we had moved from LA to Makiki, Hawaii, and lived there for about a year. And by going to Hawaii and living there, I had heard about some musicians that had made some music in China. I flew to China for 2 years and recorded bands out there. But this is all being affected by Steve and Heather. And I wish there was more I could tell you on how much I love the guy, but I know I have to put glasses on. It's too intense. One last thing that I thought would be funny is that in me working with Steve, For years and years, I would talk about, how I worked with Albini and he made my record and I loved him. And then people started calling me, I would think it was endearing, but they call me Albiner. And some of my friends were like, that's fucking racist. And I'm like, yeah, but, I loved Albini so much. I'm Albiner. I'm the Mexican version of him, even though it's not. There's no way I could even equal that. So anyways, sorry about the glasses. It's heavy. I love you all.